Corporal James Riker hit Betio's black sand, expecting to advance with his platoon. A mortar blast buried him while his unit pushed forward. 3 hours later, he clawed free to find the beach empty except for corpses. He was alone on an island with 4,000 Japanese soldiers, armed with a useless rifle, 3 canteens, and his wife's letter. For 9 days, he survived as a ghost in bombed-out bunkers while naval guns pounded overhead. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. James Riker crouched in the Higgins boat with 30 other Marines, the smell of diesel fuel mixing with vomit and salt spray. The naval bombardment had been pounding Betio Island for 3 days straight, turning the palm trees into charcoal skeletons and the Japanese bunkers into what intelligence promised would be rubble. He didn't believe it. Nobody who'd seen those fortifications from aerial photos believed it. He pulled the letter from his breast pocket one more time. Sarah's handwriting, careful and neat, telling him about their daughter Mary's second birthday party, about the harvest coming in strong back in Nebraska, about how she'd wait forever if that's what it took. He'd read it 40 times since it arrived 2 weeks ago. The paper was soft from handling, the creases threatening to tear. "Put that away, Riker," Gunny Morrison shouted over the roar of the boat's engine. "You'll get it wet." James folded it carefully and slipped it into the waterproof map case in his inner pocket. Tommy Chen, squeezed in beside him, grinned despite the fear etched on every face in the boat. "Your good luck charm." Something like that. "My mom sent me a Buddha. Figure between your letter and my Buddha, we're covered." The boat lurched as a shell exploded 50 yards to starboard, throwing spray across the Marines. James tasted salt and cordite. His hands were steady on his M1 Garand, but his stomach churned. This was it. Everything the last 18 months of training had built toward. Operation Galvanic, the first step toward Tokyo. Gunny Morrison stood as steady as a man could in a bucking boat. "Listen up. Beach is 300 yards. We hit the sand, we move. Don't bunch up, don't stop, don't think. Just move inland and link up. Japanese got maybe 4,500 defenders on an island smaller than most Nebraska farms, and we're gonna kick every last one of them into the ocean." Someone muttered a prayer in Spanish. Another Marine was quietly singing the Marine's hymn under his breath. James checked his rifle again, the familiar weight somehow comforting. Back home, he'd hunted deer in weather that dropped to 20 below zero, tracked wounded bucks through snow for miles. He knew cold, hunger, and patience. Whatever happened on that beach, he'd handle it. The boat suddenly jolted to a grinding halt. They'd hit the reef. "Over the sides!" Morrison bellowed. "Move! Move! Move!" James swung his legs over the gunwale and dropped into chest-deep water. The weight of his pack and ammunition tried to drag him under. Around him, Marines were splashing down, rifles held high, struggling toward the beach that was still 500 yards away. Intelligence said they'd land right on the beach. Intelligence was wrong. Machine gun fire ripped across the water. Men started falling. The water turned pink around James as bullets snapped past his head, making wet cracks in the air. He pushed forward, using a coral outcropping for cover, his boots finding purchase on the sharp reef that tore through his uniform. Every step was a fight against the ocean, trying to drag him back, and the 60 pounds of gear trying to pull him under. Tommy Chen was 20 yards to his left, moving fast. A burst of machine gun fire stitched across the water between them. Tommy stumbled, went under, came up gasping. James tried to angle toward him, but the press of Marines behind drove him forward. He lost sight of Tommy in the chaos. Men were screaming, some for corpsmen, some for their mothers, some just screaming. The machine gun nests on the seawall that 3 days of naval bombardment should have destroyed were very much intact, pouring fire into the Marines trapped in the water. James kept low, moving from coral head to coral head, watching tracers zip overhead. An explosion geysered water 30 feet high. Mortar fire. The Japanese had the range dialed in perfectly, dropping shells into the kill zone with methodical precision. A Marine next to James caught shrapnel and disappeared beneath the surface without a sound. James's training kicked in, overriding the panic trying to claw its way up his throat. "Move. Don't stop moving. Stay low. Use cover. He spotted a destroyed Amtrak 50 yards ahead, half submerged, and made for it. The water was shallower here, only waist deep. He could move faster. A mortar round hit the Amtrak just as he reached it. The concussion lifted him off his feet and threw him backward. He felt himself tumbling through the air, saw the sky and water trade places, heard a sound like thunder inside his skull. Then he hit something hard and everything went white. When his vision cleared, he was wedged against a coral formation, water lapping at his face. His ears rang so loud he couldn't hear the battle anymore. Blood ran from his nose, warm and copper-tasting. His rifle was gone. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't respond properly. Shock, he thought distantly. He forced himself to breathe slowly, checking for injuries. Nothing broken that he could tell. The map case was still in his pocket. He could feel it pressing against his ribs. His 3 canteens were intact, miracle of miracles. But his rifle was somewhere in the water, and his ammunition pouches were half empty. The world swam back into focus gradually. He could see Marines pushing past him toward the beach, fewer now than before. He could see bodies floating in the water, face down, rocking gently with the waves. He tried to call out, but his voice came out as a croak. Move, he told himself. Get to the beach. Find your unit. He managed to stand, swaying, and started forward again. Each step was an effort of will over a body that wanted to lie down and quit. He made it another 30 yards before the world tilted sideways and went dark. When James opened his eyes again, he was buried. Not completely, he could still breathe, but pinned under what felt like half a ton of debris. Sand filled his mouth. Something heavy pressed against his chest, making each breath a struggle. Panic surged through him, primal and overwhelming. No. He forced the panic down, made himself think. Back home, he'd been trapped in a grain silo once when a support beam gave way. Same feeling, same suffocating weight. His father had talked him through it. Breathe slow. Don't thrash. Work methodically. He started with his right hand, the only part of him that seemed to have any room to move. He pushed at the sand, creating a small pocket of air near his face. Then his left hand, inch by inch, clearing debris. His chest screamed for a full breath, but he kept his breathing shallow and controlled. Time became meaningless. Could have been 10 minutes or 2 hours. He worked in darkness, his world reduced to the rasp of his breathing and the scrape of coral and sand moving grain by grain. His fingers found wood, part of a shattered pier or bunker wall. He pushed it aside. Found concrete. Pushed that too. Finally, light. A crack, then a gap, then his hand broke through to open air. He widened the opening, cleared more debris from around his head, and pulled himself free like a man being born a second time. The beach was quiet. That was the first thing that registered. The second was the sun, high overhead now. He'd been under for hours. The tide had come in and gone back out, leaving the black sand littered with equipment, shell casings, and bodies. So many bodies. He sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. His watch was cracked but still working. 1,100 hours. The landing had been at 0630. He'd lost nearly 5 hours. The sound of gunfire came from inland, maybe half a mile away. His unit had pushed forward. They'd left him behind, probably thought he was dead. He looked at the pile of debris that had buried him, part of a destroyed Japanese bunker, blown apart by the mortar that had knocked him unconscious. James did a quick inventory. His rifle was gone, lost in the water. He had 3 canteens all full. His K rations were crushed but edible. The map case in his breast pocket had survived. He could feel Sarah's letter inside. His combat knife was strapped to his belt. He had 2 grenades and maybe 30 rounds of loose ammunition, useless without a rifle. He stood on shaky legs and surveyed the beach. No living Marines in sight. No Japanese either, at least not here. They'd pulled back to fortified positions inland. He was alone. The realization hit him like a physical blow. 4,000 Japanese soldiers controlled this island. He had no weapon, no radio, no way to signal for help. The sound of naval guns boomed from offshore, American ships still pounding Japanese positions. His unit was fighting somewhere inland. He needed to think. Assess the situation like Gunny Morrison always said. Take stock, make a plan, execute. First priority, find a weapon. He started walking the beach, checking bodies. Most of the weapons were fouled with sand and seawater, mechanisms jammed solid. He found one M1 Garand that looked promising, checked the action, stuck tight. He kept searching. Found a dead Japanese soldier near a destroyed pillbox, still gripping a Type 99 rifle. James pried it from the man's hands, checked it over. The bolt worked smoothly. He had no idea how to reload it or where to find ammunition, but it was better than nothing. He heard voices, Japanese voices, coming from beyond the seawall. He dropped flat behind a pile of sandbags, heart hammering. 3 soldiers appeared, moving carefully through the ruins, checking bodies. James held his breath as they came within 20 feet of his position. One of them was talking, gesturing toward the water. Another laughed. They thought every Marine who'd landed here was either dead or driven inland. They walked past without seeing him. James waited until they disappeared around a destroyed bunker before moving again. His hands were shaking, adrenaline catching up with him. He needed shelter, somewhere to hide and figure out his next move. His eyes fell on a partially collapsed bunker 30 yards away, Japanese construction, concrete walls 3 feet thick. The entrance was half buried, but he could squeeze through. He made his decision and low-crawled toward it, dragging the Japanese rifle. The bunker smelled like death and cordite. James squeezed through the partially collapsed entrance, coral dust coating his uniform as he scraped past twisted rebar and shattered concrete. Inside, the darkness was absolute until his eyes adjusted. Then he saw the body. A Japanese soldier slumped against the far wall, half his torso missing from what looked like a direct hit from naval artillery. James's stomach turned, but he forced himself forward. The dead man had a canteen hanging from his belt, a small cloth bag, and a bayonet in its scabbard. James took all 3, whispering an apology he knew the man couldn't hear. The canteen was half full. The cloth bag contained rice balls wrapped in leaves, somehow still intact. James ate one slowly, the sticky rice bland but edible. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until the food hit his stomach. He moved deeper into the bunker, away from the entrance where light could betray his position. The space was maybe 10 feet by 12, with a firing slit facing the beach, now partially blocked by rubble. Perfect. He could see out, but anyone looking in would see only darkness. James set up his cache. 3 American canteens, 1 Japanese, 4 rice balls, 2 grenades, 1 Japanese rifle with ammunition he didn't know how to use, 1 bayonet, 1 combat knife, 2 days of K rations, crushed but edible, and Sarah's letter, still dry in the waterproof case. He pulled out the letter and read it in the dim light from the firing slit. Mary had lost her first tooth. Sarah had canned 40 jars of tomatoes from the garden. Ordinary things. Beautiful things. Things that mattered more now than they ever had before. A sound outside froze him. Voices, multiple speakers, Japanese getting closer. James shoved the letter back and pressed himself against the wall beside the entrance. His hand found the bayonet. The voices stopped right outside the bunker. 2 men, maybe 3. One laughed at something. They were close enough that James could hear the click of a lighter, smell cigarette smoke drifting through the entrance. His heart hammered so loud he was certain they could hear it. His hand gripped the bayonet until his knuckles went white. If they came inside, he'd have to fight. 3 against 1, and he was exhausted, concussed, and half deaf from the explosions. But they didn't come in. After what felt like an hour but was probably 5 minutes, the voices moved away. James stayed frozen for another 10 minutes until he was certain they were gone. He slid down the wall and sat on the concrete floor, his legs unable to hold him. This was his reality now, hiding in the dark, holding his breath every time he heard voices, surviving on stolen rice balls and tepid water. The sound of naval guns rumbled across the island, American ships still pounding Japanese positions. That meant the battle was still going. That meant his unit was still fighting. James pulled out the letter one more time and read it. Then he marked the bunker wall with a piece of coral. 1 tally mark. Day 1. Night fell like a curtain dropping. James waited in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the island settle around him. The gunfire had died down to sporadic bursts. The naval bombardment had stopped. In the quiet, he could hear insects chirping and the distant crash of waves on the reef. His watch read 2100 hours. He'd been in the bunker for 9 hours, dozing fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. His head still throbbed from the concussion, and his body ached from being buried alive. But he couldn't stay here forever. He needed better supplies. A plan. He decided to move at full darkness. The Japanese would have sentries, but they'd be watching for American advances from inland, not for a single Marine moving through ruins they thought they'd secured. James checked his meager weapons. The bayonet went on his belt, one grenade on his harness, easy to reach. He left the Japanese rifle. It would only slow him down. He took one canteen of water, left the others cached. Travel light. Stay quiet. Get back before dawn. He squeezed through the entrance and crouched in the rubble outside, letting his eyes adjust. The moon was a sliver, barely providing light. Good for hiding, bad for navigation. He oriented himself by the sound of the surf in the faint glow of fires burning inland. James moved like he'd moved through Nebraska woods hunting deer, slow and deliberate, testing each footfall. Coral crunched if you weren't careful. He'd taped down everything that could make noise before leaving the bunker. He worked his way north along the beach, staying low, using destroyed equipment and rubble for cover. Bodies lay everywhere, American and Japanese both, already starting to bloat in the tropical heat. The smell was overwhelming. James breathed through his mouth and kept moving. A flare went up inland, brilliant white light flooding the battlefield. James dropped flat behind a destroyed Amtrak and stayed motionless until the flare faded. His night vision was shot for the next 5 minutes. He waited, counting his heartbeats. When he could see again, he spotted what he was looking for. An American supply dump, hastily abandoned when the Marines had pushed forward. Wooden crates stacked haphazardly, some broken open, contents spilled across the sand. James approached carefully, watching for sentries. Nothing moved. He reached the first crate and looked inside. Ammunition. Boxes of .30-06 rounds for the M1 Garand. Useless without a rifle, but he made note of the location. The next crate held medical supplies. Bandages, sulfa powder, morphine syrettes, iodine tablets. He stuffed sulfa powder and iodine tablets into his pockets. Found a small medical kit and took it whole. The morphine he left, wounded men probably needed it more. The third crate made him smile. K rations. Dozens of boxes. He took 6 boxes, enough for 6 days if he rationed carefully, added them to the canvas bag he'd taken from the dead Japanese soldier. A sound made him freeze. Footsteps. Multiple people moving through the ruins maybe 50 yards away. Japanese patrol. James pressed himself against a crate and waited, barely breathing. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. He heard voices, quiet conversation. One man laughed. Another shushed him. The patrol moved on, heading toward the beach. James waited until he couldn't hear them anymore, then gathered his supplies and started back toward his bunker, moving even more carefully now. He had what he needed. 6 more days of food, medical supplies, the water and rice balls he'd cached earlier. He could last a week if he was careful. Maybe the Marines would secure the island by then. Maybe he could find a way to signal them. Maybe. James was 50 yards from his bunker when he nearly walked into them. 4 Japanese soldiers crouched in a shell crater, so close he could have reached out and touched the nearest one. He froze mid-step, 1 foot still in the air, holding a position that would cramp his leg in seconds. But he didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. They were taking a break, passing around a canteen. One was smoking, the ember glowing orange in the darkness. They were positioned directly between James and his bunker. He couldn't go forward, couldn't go back without being seen. His legs started to shake from holding the awkward position. Sweat ran down his face. The canvas bag of supplies hung from his shoulder, suddenly feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. One of the soldiers stood up, stretching. James's heart stopped. The soldier looked directly at him. James was sure of it. The man's eyes passed right over his position, silhouetted against the rubble. But the soldier turned away, said something to his companions, and sat back down. He had looked at him and seen nothing, just another shadow. He stayed frozen for 10 more minutes while the soldiers rested. His legs screamed, his back cramped. The bag cut into his shoulder, but he didn't move. This was survival now, being a statue when you needed to be a statue. Finally, one of the soldiers said something, and they all stood up. They moved off toward the interior of the island. James waited until he couldn't hear their footsteps, then lowered his legs slowly, almost collapsing as the cramped muscles released. He stayed in position for another 5 minutes, then moved the last 50 yards to his bunker in a low crouch. He squeezed through the entrance and collapsed inside, his whole body shaking. That was too close. He needed to be smarter, more careful. The Japanese were everywhere, and one mistake would get him killed or captured. James organized his new supplies in the darkness. 6 boxes of K rations stacked against the wall, medical kit beside them, iodine tablets with the canteens. He rationed himself 1 meal, eating slowly. The crackers were stale but edible. The cheese came in a can and tasted like salted paste. He checked his watch. 300 hours. Dawn would come in about 3 hours. He needed sleep, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. He kept seeing that soldier's eyes passing over him. He pulled out Sarah's letter and read it by the faint light coming through the firing slit. Her words calmed him, reminded him what he was surviving for. Mary, Sarah, the farm, home. He put the letter away and forced himself to lie down on the hard concrete. Sleep came in fitful bursts, full of dreams about drowning and being buried alive. When dawn light finally crept through the firing slit, he woke exhausted but alive. He scratched a second tally mark on the wall. Day 2. This story takes time to craft. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The sound of American artillery woke James at dawn. Not the distant naval guns he'd grown accustomed to, but closer fire. Much closer. The Marines were advancing. He could hear the distinct crack of M1 Garands now, mixed with the sharper reports of Japanese rifles. The battle had shifted overnight. He risked a look through the firing slit. Smoke rose from positions maybe 300 yards inland. Tracers arced through the morning air. An explosion sent debris skyward. The Americans were pushing hard, systematically reducing Japanese strongpoints, which meant his section of ruins would become a battlefield soon, maybe today, maybe in an hour. James ate a K-ration breakfast slowly, forcing himself to chew each bite thoroughly. The coffee packet dissolved in cold water from his canteen, bitter and gritty, but caffeinated. He needed to think clearly, needed a plan. The logical move was to hunker down and wait for the Americans to overrun his position. But what if the Japanese decided to make a stand here? What if his bunker became a machine gun nest? He'd be trapped, caught between 2 fires, with no way to signal he was friendly. He watched through the firing slit as a Japanese patrol ran past, 6 men moving fast toward the sound of gunfire. They were falling back, consolidating positions. The noose was tightening. An hour later, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Voices outside the bunker, multiple speakers, heavy footsteps, equipment being set down. Then Japanese words spoken in an authoritative tone. They were setting up right outside his bunker. James pressed himself against the wall in the darkest corner, barely daring to breathe. Through the firing slit, he could see a machine gun position being constructed. Sandbags, ammunition crates, at least 4 soldiers that he could see, probably more out of view. His bunker had just become part of the Japanese defensive line. One of the soldiers appeared at the entrance, silhouetted against the morning light. James's hand moved slowly to the bayonet on his belt. The soldier peered into the darkness, said something in Japanese. James held his breath. The soldier took a step inside. Another voice called from outside. The soldier at the entrance responded, then turned and left. James heard laughter, then the sound of a canteen being opened. They were taking a water break. He had maybe 5 minutes before they came back to investigate more thoroughly. 5 minutes to decide whether to hide deeper in the rubble, try to slip out, or prepare to fight. His eyes had adjusted fully to the darkness now. There was a gap in the rubble at the back of the bunker, where the wall had partially collapsed. Narrow, maybe too narrow, but it led somewhere, into what looked like an adjoining space. James gathered his most essential supplies: 1 canteen, 2 K rations, the bayonet, Sarah's letter. He left the rest cached in the corner, covered with rubble. If he survived, he could come back for it. He squeezed into the gap, Coral scraping his ribs, and pushed through into darkness. The adjoining space was smaller, maybe 6 feet by 8, and the ceiling had partially collapsed, leaving barely 3 feet of headroom. James couldn't stand, could barely sit upright, but he was hidden, separated from the Japanese position by a wall of rubble that muffled sound. He could hear them, though. Voices, equipment being moved, the metallic click of ammunition being loaded. Someone laughed. Someone else barked an order. They were maybe 10 feet away on the other side of the collapsed wall. The coral cuts on his ribs were bleeding. He could feel wetness spreading across his shirt. He found the iodine tablets in his pocket and used precious water from his canteen to rinse the wounds, biting down on his sleeve to keep from making noise as the iodine burned. The sound of gunfire erupted closer now, much closer. The crack of M1 Garands, the rip of a machine gun, grenades exploding. The battle had reached his position. The bunker shook with the concussion of nearby explosions. Dust and coral fragments rained down from the ceiling. James pressed himself flat as the firing intensified. He could hear the Japanese soldiers shouting to each other, the machine gun firing in sustained bursts. Return fire sparked off the concrete walls. Someone screamed. The machine gun went silent, then started up again. An explosion rocked the bunker so hard James thought the ceiling would come down. His ears rang. More shouting in Japanese, panic now. Another explosion, closer. The smell of cordite filled the small space, choking him. Then American voices, clear as day. Grenade out! An explosion. Move up! Cover that firing slit! They were right outside, right on top of him. James's unit, or another unit just like it, assaulting the position where the Japanese had set up. He wanted to shout, wanted to call out that he was here, that he was American, that he needed help, but the firing was too intense. They'd never hear him, and if the Japanese heard him first, they'd kill him before the Americans even knew he existed. More grenades, more gunfire, then silence, sudden and absolute. Position secure, an American voice called out. 2 enemy, KIA, rest fell back. James's heart hammered. They were right there, 20 feet away. He could crawl through the rubble, show himself, end this nightmare. But what if there were still Japanese soldiers nearby? What if they saw him emerge and thought he was enemy? What if in the chaos of combat, trigger fingers were too quick? He waited in the darkness, listening as the Marines secured the position, listened as they moved on, pushing forward, leaving the bunker behind. Their voices faded. The sound of combat moved inland, and James stayed hidden in his hole, separated from rescue by 20 feet of rubble and his own caution. When silence returned, he wanted to scream. He'd been so close, so damn close. He pulled out Sarah's letter in the darkness and held it, unable to read it, but knowing every word by heart. Day 3. James waited until nightfall before moving. 6 hours curled in the cramped space, listening to occasional gunfire in the distance. When darkness came, he squeezed back through the gap into his original bunker. The Japanese had abandoned it after the American assault, leaving behind spent shell casings and blood on the concrete floor. 2 bodies lay outside. James forced himself to check them, looking for anything useful. Found a full canteen and a pouch of rice. His cached supplies were still there, untouched in the rubble. He reorganized everything, taking stock. 4 canteens now, all full. 8 K rations plus the rice, medical supplies. He had enough for another week if needed. The question was whether he'd need it. The Americans were advancing. The Japanese were falling back. Maybe the island would be secured in a day or 2. Maybe he just needed to stay hidden a little longer. He decided to scout the situation, get a sense of where the lines were. James moved through the ruins like a ghost, staying low, using the darkness. The beach area was mostly secure now. He could see American positions dug in, sentries posted. Supplies were being unloaded from boats that had finally made it through. He could walk down to that beach right now, could surrender to those sentries, could end this. But the Japanese weren't beaten yet. He could still hear heavy fighting toward the interior. Small arms fire, grenades, the occasional boom of a tank gun. The island wasn't secure, which meant the Americans would be on high alert, jumpy, expecting counterattacks. A lone Marine appearing out of the ruins in the dark. That was a good way to get shot. He'd wait. One more day, two at most. James worked his way inland instead, careful to avoid both American and Japanese positions. He found a bombed-out structure that had been some kind of headquarters, papers scattered everywhere, most burned or water damaged. But one caught his eye, a map partially intact, showing the island's layout. He studied it in the moonlight, committing it to memory. The Japanese had marked their defensive positions, their supply caches, their fallback points. This was intelligence the Americans could use. He folded the map carefully and tucked it into his shirt next to Sarah's letter. He wasn't just saving himself anymore. He was carrying information that could save other Marines. On his way back to the bunker, he spotted something that made him freeze. A Marine, sitting alone in a shell crater about 50 yards away. Just sitting there, rifle across his knees, staring at nothing. James watched for several minutes. The Marine didn't move, didn't react to sounds. Shell shock. The man's mind had broken under the stress of combat. James took a step toward him, then stopped. If he revealed himself now to help this one Marine, he'd have to reveal himself to everyone. The shell-shocked Marine might not even recognize him as friendly, might shoot him on instinct. The cold calculation made James sick, but he backed away. The Marine had his unit. They'd find him eventually. James had no one. He returned to his bunker and added another day to his mental count. Day 4. The next morning brought rain, heavy tropical downpour that turned the coral dust into mud and filled every crater and depression with brown water. James positioned his canteens under gaps in the bunker ceiling, collecting fresh rainwater. By noon, he had all 4 canteens full plus the 2 Japanese canteens he'd found. Water wasn't a problem anymore, but the rain brought other problems. His K rations were getting damp despite his efforts to keep them dry. The paper packaging was starting to disintegrate. He'd have to eat them soon before they spoiled completely. And the coral cuts on his ribs were showing signs of infection despite the iodine treatment. Red streaks radiated from the wounds. He needed real medical attention, not field expedient care. The rain also meant no air cover for the Americans. No naval bombardment. The assault had stalled, waiting for the weather to clear, which meant James had more time. Time to heal, time to plan, time to decide when and how to make contact. The fever hit on day 5. James woke shivering despite the tropical heat, his body alternating between chills and sweats that soaked through his uniform. The coral cuts on his ribs had turned angry red, the infection spreading despite his attempts to keep them clean. Red streaks ran up his side like fingers reaching for his heart. He knew what that meant: blood poisoning. Without antibiotics, without proper medical care, he had maybe 2 or 3 days before the infection killed him. James forced himself to eat a K ration, though his stomach rebelled. He needed calories to fight the infection. He drank from his canteen until his stomach sloshed, then drank more. The sulfa powder. He still had sulfa powder in the medical kit. He pulled it out with shaking hands. Instructions in English. For treatment of infected wounds. Apply directly to wound. Cover with sterile dressing. He had no sterile dressing, just a filthy uniform, dirty hands, and a bunker full of coral dust. But he had to try. James peeled his shirt off, biting down on his sleeve as the fabric stuck to the infected wounds. The cuts looked worse than he'd thought. Pus oozed from the edges. The skin around them was hot and swollen. He poured sulfa powder directly into the wounds, gasping at the burning sensation. Used the last of his iodine to rinse around the edges. Tore strips from his undershirt to make bandages and wrapped them as tightly as he could manage. Then he lay back on the concrete floor and let the fever take him. He dreamed of Nebraska, of snow falling on the farm, of Sarah standing in the kitchen, of Mary toddling across the living room floor. The dreams were so vivid he could smell the bread, could feel Mary's weight as he picked her up. Then the dreams turned dark. He was drowning in the reef again. Tommy Chen was there, reaching for him, but James couldn't reach back. The water filled his lungs. He woke gasping, his heart racing. Night had fallen. His watch said 1,800 hours, but he didn't know which day. The fever had broken. He was soaked in sweat, but the chills were gone. He touched his side carefully. The wounds were still hot, still infected, but the red streaks seemed less prominent. Maybe the sulfa powder was working. James crawled to his water supply and drank deeply, found a K ration and forced himself to eat. His hands were steadier now, his thinking clearer. He heard voices outside, American voices, closer than before. He risked a look through the firing slit and saw Marines moving through the ruins, systematically clearing bunkers. One of them was maybe 30 yards away, rifle at the ready, checking a destroyed pillbox. James could call out, could end this, could get the medical help he desperately needed, but his voice wouldn't work. His throat was too raw from fever, and the Marine moved on before James could force words out. James spent the next 12 hours fighting to stay alive. Every time he woke, he forced himself to drink water, to check the bandages. The fever would spike, then break, then spike again. During a moment of clarity, he realized he needed to make a signal. He crawled to the entrance and used his combat knife to scratch letters into the concrete. M-A-R-I-N-E, then his name, R-I-K-E-R, and his unit, 2-N-D-B-A-T-T. The effort exhausted him. He collapsed back inside, gasping, but at least now there was evidence. James pulled out the letter and read it again. The paper was falling apart now, barely legible, but he knew the words by heart. The next time he woke, it was to voices again, right outside the bunker. American voices. James tried to call out, but only managed to croak. "You hear something?" one voice said. "Just wind, probably. Let's check this bunker and move on." Footsteps, coming closer. James gathered every bit of strength and called out, "American, Marine, help!" The footsteps stopped. The hell was that? A flashlight beam swept through the entrance, landing on James's face. He raised one shaking hand. "Holy shit! Corporal, we got someone in here!" More footsteps, then a different voice, older, authoritative. "Identify yourself!" James pointed weakly at the words he'd scratched on the wall. Marine, Riker. The flashlight beam found the scratches, then swung back to James. The corporal appeared in the entrance. "You American?" James nodded, managed to whisper. "Corporal James Riker, 2nd Battalion, landing day." The corporal's eyes went wide. Landing day, that was 5 days ago. James held up his hand, fingers spread, then closed it and opened 2 more fingers. 7 days. Jesus Christ. The corporal turned back. "Wilson, get a corpsman up here." The corpsman arrived minutes later. He took one look at James and started barking orders. "Get me more light." The corporal positioned his flashlight while the corpsman peeled back James's bandages. "When did this happen?" "Day 1, James managed. "Coral cuts. 5 days with no treatment." The corpsman's eyebrows went up. "You should be dead." "Used sulfa powder yesterday." "Smart. Probably saved your life." The corpsman pulled out a syringe of penicillin. "This'll kill the infection." James barely felt the needle. "How'd you survive?" the corporal asked. James pointed at his cache. The corpsman whistled. "Been scavenging." The corporal picked up the Japanese map from James's shirt. "Where'd you get this?" "Japanese headquarters. Thought you could use it." The corporal studied the map. "This shows their defensive positions. This is gold." The corpsman finished bandaging James properly. "You need a hospital ship." They lifted James onto a stretcher. As they carried him out, James saw daylight for the first time in days. The beach was transformed. Supply dumps everywhere. Medical tents. Marines moving with purpose. They'd won. "What day is it?" James asked. "November 27th. James did the math. He'd landed on November 20th. Day 8. He'd survived 8 days alone. They reached the beach where a landing craft was loading wounded. As they loaded him onto the boat, the corporal leaned in. "That map you found, that's gonna save lives." As the boat pulled away, James caught one last glimpse of Betio Island, the place that had nearly killed him. He pulled out Sarah's letter one final time. He wouldn't make her wait much longer. The hospital ship was chaos. Wounded Marines everywhere, doctors and nurses moving between cots. They put James in a bed where a Navy doctor examined him while a nurse took his vitals. "Temperature's 103, the nurse said. "Blood pressure low." The doctor lifted James's bandages. "This infection should have killed you. How long since you applied the sulfa powder?" 24 hours, James managed. And before that, iodine. Day 1. The doctor shook his head. You're either lucky or tough. Probably both. He turned to the nurse. IV fluids, penicillin every 4 hours. You got family waiting? The nurse asked. Wife, daughter, Nebraska. They know you're alive. James shook his head. Listed as missing, probably. We'll get word to them. Over the next 2 days, the penicillin worked. The fever broke for good on day 3 aboard ship. The red streaks faded. The wounds started closing. James could sit up without the room spinning. An intelligence officer came by on day 4. Captain Morrison. He brought the Japanese map. This map saved lives, Corporal Riker, Morrison said. The Japanese had a tunnel system we didn't know about. Your map showed us where the entrances were. We avoided 2 ambushes because of this. What about my unit? James asked. 2nd Battalion. Morrison's expression softened. They took heavy casualties, about 40%, but they secured their objectives. Gunny Morrison made it through. He's the one who reported you missing. Said you were buried in an explosion. I was. Took me 3 hours to dig out. Morrison pulled out a notepad. I need to debrief you. Everything you saw, every position you encountered, how you survived. James spent the next hour telling his story. The mortar blast, being buried, finding the bunker, scavenging supplies, the close calls, the fever. Morrison wrote it all down, asking questions. You were alone behind enemy lines for 8 days, Morrison said. That's got to be some kind of record. I just wanted to get home. You did more than survive, Corporal. You gathered intelligence. You showed initiative under extreme conditions. Morrison closed his notepad. I'm recommending you for a Silver Star. James didn't know what to say. He hadn't been trying to be a hero. He'd just been trying not to die. Morrison left and James lay back on the cot, exhausted from talking. A Navy chaplain stopped by an hour later, a Catholic priest with captain's bars. Heard you spent 8 days alone out there, the chaplain said, sitting on the edge of the bed. That takes a special kind of strength. I had help, James said, pulling out Sarah's letter. The paper was barely holding together now. The words smudged and faded. My wife wrote this. I read it every day, sometimes twice a day. The chaplain took the letter carefully, handling it like the fragile thing it was. What does it say? That she'll wait forever if that's what it takes, that our daughter lost her first tooth, that the tomatoes came in good this year. James's voice caught. Normal things, beautiful things. Those normal things kept you alive. They gave me a reason to wake up every morning, to keep fighting the infection, to stay hidden when I wanted to just walk out and take my chances. The chaplain handed the letter back. You know what I see in this? I see a man who knew what mattered. A lot of men out there forgot, got lost in the violence, but you kept your eyes on home. I'm not special, Father. I just got lucky. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You prepared yourself mentally. You had the skills from growing up on a farm, and when the opportunity came to survive, you took it. The chaplain stood. You should write to your wife. Tell her you're alive. The Red Cross can get a telegram through. James hadn't thought about that. A telegram. Sarah could know today that he was alive, that he was coming home. I'll do that, James said. Thank you, Father. After the chaplain left, a nurse brought him paper and a pencil. James stared at the blank page for a long time, trying to find words adequate for what he'd been through. Finally, he just wrote the truth. Sarah, I'm alive. Coming home soon. Tell Mary her daddy kept his promise. Love, James. The telegram reached Sarah Riker in Nebraska on December 1st, 3 days after James was rescued. She was feeding chickens when the Western Union boy rode up on his bicycle. Her hands went numb when she saw the yellow envelope. Telegrams during wartime meant death or miracles. She opened it right there in the yard, chickens pecking at her feet. Sarah, stop him alive. Stop coming home soon. Stop, tell Mary her daddy kept his promise. Stop, love, James. She read it 3 times before her legs gave out, and she sat down hard in the dirt, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Mary came running from the house, worried, asking what was wrong. Sarah pulled her daughter close and told her Daddy was coming home. James didn't know about the telegram's arrival until a week later, when the Red Cross delivered Sarah's reply to the hospital ship. He was sitting on the deck, watching the Pacific roll by, his wounds healing slowly. The infection was gone. His strength was returning. In another week, they'd transfer him to Pearl Harbor, then stateside. He opened Sarah's telegram carefully. James, stop, thank God. Stop, we thought we lost you. Stop, Mary's birthday tomorrow. Stop, Shell, wait for you to celebrate. Stop, come home, safe, stop, love. Sarah Mary's birthday, he'd missed it by a week. But Sarah said they'd wait. They'd celebrate when he got home. The ship's doctor cleared him for travel on December 8th. They flew him to Pearl Harbor on a C-47 transport with 24 other wounded Marines. The flight took 7 hours. James spent most of it sleeping, his first real sleep in weeks. No nightmares. No waking up thinking Japanese soldiers were outside his bunker. At Pearl Harbor, they put him in a proper hospital for another week of observation. The doctors wanted to make sure the infection was completely gone. James endured the test with patience. He'd waited this long. Another week wouldn't kill him. A reporter from Stars and Stripes found him on December 10th. Word had gotten around about the Marine who'd survived 8 days alone behind enemy lines. The reporter wanted the full story for publication. James told him about the landing, the mortar blast, being buried alive, about scavenging supplies and hiding from patrols, about the infection and the fever, about scratching his name on the bunker wall so someone would know an American had been there. He didn't tell him about Tommy Chen disappearing under the water, didn't tell him about the shell-shocked Marine he'd left in that crater. Some things were private. The story ran on December 15th with the headline, Ghost of Tarawa, Marine survives 8 days behind enemy lines. It made James uncomfortable, seeing his name in print, being called a hero. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who'd refused to give up because he had people waiting for him at home. On December 20th, exactly 1 month after he'd landed on Betio Island, they put James on a ship bound for San Francisco. The voyage took 12 days. James spent them on deck, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about the choices he'd made, about staying hidden when he could have tried to signal the Americans earlier, about leaving that shell-shocked Marine, about taking supplies from dead men. He'd done what he had to do to survive. That was the truth of it. War made you make choices you'd never make otherwise, but he was going home. That was what mattered. The ship docked in San Francisco on January 1st, 1944. New Year's Day, James stood on the deck with his sea bag, watching the Golden Gate Bridge grow larger. He'd left San Francisco 7 months ago as a Marine heading to war. He was returning as something different, a survivor. They processed him at the Presidio, medical exam, debriefing, paperwork. The Marine Corps wanted documentation of everything. His survival story was already being used in training materials. They gave him 30 days leave. After that, he'd report to Camp Pendleton for reassignment. The doctors recommended stateside duty given what he'd been through. He called Sarah from a payphone at the Presidio. Hello, Sarah, it's me. Silence, then a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. James, is that really you? It's really me. I'm in San Francisco. I'll be home in 3 days. 3 days. She was crying now. Oh God, James. I'm sorry I put you through that. Don't apologize, just come home. He could hear Mary in the background. Sarah told her, and then Mary was on the phone. Daddy, is that you? It's me, sweetheart. Daddy's coming home. For my birthday. We're going to have the best birthday party ever. They talked for 10 more minutes until the operator cut in. James hung up and stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the simple fact of having spoken to them. The train to Nebraska took 2 days. James sat by the window watching America roll past. California hills giving way to Nevada desert, giving way to Rocky Mountains, giving way to endless plains. Every mile brought him closer to the life he'd fought so hard to get back to. Other passengers noticed his uniform, the Purple Heart ribbon on his chest. Some thanked him for his service. Some asked where he'd fought. James kept his answers short. Pacific Theater, Tarawa. A businessman sitting across from him on the final leg had read the Stars and Stripes article. recognized James's name from the tags on his sea bag. "You're the ghost of Tarawa." James nodded. He was getting used to the nickname, though he still didn't like it. That must have taken incredible courage. "It took stubbornness," James said, "and a wife who told me she'd wait forever." The train pulled into Lincoln Station at 4 in the afternoon on January 4th. James grabbed his sea bag and stepped onto the platform. The cold hit him like a wall after weeks in the Pacific heat. It felt wonderful, and there they were, Sarah and Mary standing by the station entrance. Sarah wore her blue coat. Mary wore a red hat with ear flaps. Sarah saw him first. Her hand went to her mouth. Then she was running. James dropped his sea bag and caught Sarah as she crashed into him. She was crying, laughing, holding him so tight he could barely breathe. He didn't care. He held her just as tightly, breathing in the smell of her hair, the scent of home he'd remembered in that bunker when the fever had him convinced he was dying. "You're here," she kept saying. "You're really here." "I'm here. I made it home." Mary hung back, suddenly shy around the father she hadn't seen in 7 months. James knelt down to his daughter's level. She'd grown. Her face had lost some of its baby roundness. He'd missed that whole year. "Hi, sweetheart. Remember me?" Mary nodded, then rushed forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Daddy came home." "That's right. Daddy came home. And he's not leaving again." They drove back to the farm in their old Ford truck, Sarah behind the wheel. The Nebraska countryside looked exactly the same. Snow-covered fields, fence posts marching to the horizon. The farm looked smaller than he remembered, but it was still home, still the place he'd dreamed about in that concrete bunker. Sarah had kept everything running while he was gone. The chickens were fed, the tractor was maintained, the fields were prepared for spring planting. She'd done it all herself with help from neighbors. That night, after Mary was asleep, James and Sarah sat at the kitchen table and he told her everything. The real story. He told her about being buried alive, about the terror of waking up to find his unit gone, about stealing from corpses because that was the only way to survive, about the fever and the infection. He told her about Tommy Chen disappearing under the water, about the shell-shocked Marine he'd left in that crater, about the choices he'd made that still kept him awake at night. Sarah listened without interrupting, her hand covering his. When he finished, she said, "You did what you had to do to come home to us. That's all that matters." I keep thinking about the men who didn't make it home. Why did I survive when they didn't? "I don't know," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe you just got lucky, but you're here now, and that's what I'm grateful for." James pulled out the letter, the one he'd carried through everything. It was barely holding together now, the words almost completely faded. "This is what saved me. You saved me." Sarah took the letter carefully, her eyes filling with tears as she looked at her own handwriting. "I wrote this thinking you'd read it once and throw it away. I memorized every word. When the paper got too damaged to read, I could still recite it from memory." They sat in silence for a while, holding hands across the table. Outside, the Nebraska wind howled across the plains. Finally, Sarah spoke. "The Marine Corps wants you back after 30 days. They're offering me a stateside assignment, training new recruits. Will you take it?" James thought about Betio Island, about the beach covered in bodies, about 8 days alone in the dark. "No," he said. "I've done my part. I'm staying here. With you and Mary. This is where I belong." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Good, because we're not letting you go again." James Riker lived on that Nebraska farm for the next 54 years. He never went back to the Marines, never talked much about the war except to other veterans who understood. He raised Mary and later 2 more children, worked the land, fixed tractors, led a quiet life. But he kept that letter in his wallet until the day he died in 1998. Kept it even though the words had long since faded to nothing. When people asked why he carried a blank piece of paper, he'd say it wasn't blank to him. He could still read every word. The silver star they awarded him hung in a drawer, not on the wall. He told his grandchildren he wasn't special, just stubborn, and lucky enough to have someone worth surviving for. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and share it. It helps the next person find their way here.